My guest today is Jessica Dennehey, a best-selling author and motivational speaker passionate about helping people find success and happiness by putting themselves first. A former Wall Street attorney turned entrepreneur, Jessica is the author of Selfish is a Superpower, which chronicles her journey and empowers readers to dominate personally and professionally, all by embracing the fact that selfish is a superpower. Welcome to Lifeology.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
My viewers and listeners don't know this, but we've had so much technical difficulties that this is going to be a wonderful time. Third, fourth time is a charm. So the question I've asked you multiple times since we've done this is, you are a Wall Street attorney. How did you even get into that industry? Because that sounds pretty exciting.
It was really exciting. I mean, I went in straight from law school, so it's like a lot of young energy, and I was in my 20s, and it was really cool. I just always wanted to be a lawyer. I thought it was a great job for me because I love chatting with people. I ask 1,000 questions. I love understanding someone else's perspective. And I thought those were really good traits for being a lawyer. And I worked for the New York Stock Exchange, which allowed me to be an investigator and an attorney all wrapped into one. So I got to investigate the case and do all the depositions and then try the case in like an administrative court. So it was really a lot of experience for someone coming straight out of law school.
Yeah.
And but what the downside yet upside is, I know my book is called Selfish is a Superpower, but one of my other superpowers I feel is being underestimated because I was definitely a fish out of water. I was young, I was a female, and I'm in a male dominant industry. Almost everyone in the stock exchange world is male. Yeah. And so I'd come in like all happy and like, hey guys, I'm Jessica. And like, they're like, oh, I'm going to wipe the floor with this kid. Right. And I was kind of like a secret sniper. Like I would be like all bubbly and happy because that's just my demeanor. And they would mistake that for a weakness when really it's a strength because I can be both majorly feminine and bubbly and also like a killer in the courtroom. So it was great. I loved it.
I have one other question though. Like I didn't even know that you could do that. I mean, how did you know that you could be a lawyer in the stock exchange? Because most people, do criminal or things like that. How did you know that?
I didn't know it until my second year of law school when I got invited to be part of this clinic in securities regulation, securities meaning stocks. And I joined the clinic and they had all these interns in a room in the New York Stock Exchange. And at that point, the exchange never hired green attorneys. And I guess so many of us impressed them with our energy being so emphatic at that stage that they decided for 1 year to hire straight out of law school. And it just happened to be that year after I interned.
Wow.
So actually it wasn't an opportunity that was on the table. And I hadn't even known about it, except my school had a professor that graduated from the school that was very high up in the New York Stock Exchange. And she is the one that was like, let's pull these kids from law school and see what they got.
That's amazing. I always think it's, when you look back retrospectively about how one door opened and created another door, another opportunity. It's pretty neat when you look back, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle pieces of her life.
Oh, I love doing that. I love doing that because you never would have guessed it, right? And the thing I learned through entrepreneurship is we worry about a lot of stuff that never happens. It's the stuff that actually we never think about. That's the stuff that happens. And when you look at your life, if you had tried to guess that this would be the way things happened, you would have never been able to do it. And so it makes me always pause and think, stop worrying because none of that stuff's going to happen. You don't even, it's not even on your radar what's about to come your way.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I did an Instagram post about this. Like faith and fear ask us to do the same thing. Believe in something that has not yet happened. And so we see the cartoons with the little devil and little angel, telling someone something. So it's the same concept as well. If we get lost in the anxiety loop, or we can get lost and get the hope of what could potentially happen. So I always think that's pretty neat when you kind of reframe it in that respect. But I wanted to transition in. So you were doing so many things. So this high-powered attorney, you were a mother, you're married, so a lot of things happening for you. And over time, I'm sure you were pretty exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really take that long, honestly, for me to be completely lost. I mean, the first couple chapters of my book are really about me becoming a mom and how that completely threw me for a loop. Like I was saying, things you never expect. One thing I never expected was to have children. Like I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to travel the world. I'm not even thinking about a family. All of a sudden I'm like, I want a baby. And then I have the baby and I completely lose myself in her. And I just want to be
Mm.
with her all the time. I didn't even want to go back to work. And when I remember
Oh,
like the
wow.
day before I went back on maternity leave, holding her in the nursery, and my husband then came in and I was like, tell me I don't have to go back tomorrow.
Mm.
And he was like, what? Like if I had said shave my
Yeah.
head, I think he would have been less surprised than hearing that from me
Oh,
because
really? Wow.
I went from super high powered, ambitious woman to like a ball of mush. And I just wanted to be
Mm-hmm.
with this kid all the time. And I totally lost myself. And I think a
Mm.
lot of mothers, especially, but parents in general, go through that
Yeah.
where they
Yeah.
feel like I'm working all the time, I'm missing out, I need to be home. And then they give up their date night, they give up their friends, they give up
Yeah.
their
Sure.
interests, and all they're doing is parenting. And that was me in 2012.
Yeah, but I think maybe to reframe not you weren't necessarily losing yourself, you were evolving to something more, which then allowed you to expand your personality and all the things you enjoyed as well, and then you
Well,
found how to
years
balance that.
later, I would
Yeah,
say
yeah,
years
yeah.
later, it was an expansion. In that moment, I was lost. Like, I remember thinking,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
like, who the heck am I anymore? Like, at some point,
Yeah.
I realized, like, I was so far gone, I didn't even know who I was. And I really had to
Mm,
retrain the way that I think and be like, you got to stay you. The way you can parent the best,
yeah.
the way you can be the best spouse, the best friend, the
Hmm.
best daughter is to be you. If you lose
Yeah.
that, what are you doing with yourself?
Yeah. When you lost yourself, how long did it take before you really realized, wow, I've actually lost myself?
I was two kids in. Like the first kid came,
Oh.
I was lost. My marriage started having some problems. And then the second kid, we just went even further down that rabbit hole. And then,
Mm,
there's two kids to worry about and working so much. And we opened a business and it was a lot of happening at the same time. And it wasn't until, like most people, right, everything has to fall apart before you have
yeah.
that aha moment. And
Hmm.
that's really when I thought, like, who am I? Oh my God,
Yeah.
I can't even answer that question because I was lost in the roles. Like, I would identify as a lawyer, a mom, a spouse,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
those aren't really who Jessica is. That's just the
Yeah.
roles that I play. And I really had to
Yeah.
work hard to figure out, like, who was that person behind all the roles.
When when you were doing all those things, all the different roles, when did you realize that you didn't have time for yourself?
It wasn't until my divorce. So we,
Okay.
obviously, and this is about me. So I take
Yeah.
50% responsibility for what happened
Sure.
because I'm 50% of the couple. So people get mad when I don't talk about like him. But my problem was I was not willing to put any time into anything but the kids, including
Mm,
myself, including my marriage. And so
yeah.
when he left and he was like, he had had enough and everything else happened, whatever it was, I thought, oh my God, like, who am I now? Like, I gotta
Mm,
find a way to pull myself out of the muck because I was devastated and I was sad. And
yeah. Yeah.
I started to realize all the mistakes I made. And I thought, I just have to figure out how to be happy again. And that's when I really started focusing on me and who I was as a person because I couldn't function anymore. Like, I was like so
Mm,
sad and so lost and so had
hmm.
so much responsibility thrown at me, and
Yeah.
that's when I started really diving into me and putting some effort into that and
Hmm.
who I am as an individual.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I mean, I'm sure that was very devastating. Lots of emotions that you experienced, but on this side of it, when we talk about it, you can see the growth that you had there. When you started to dive in and find who you were, what were the specific things you did to figure that out?
That's the hardest part. Like, step one
Yeah.
is becoming aware that you have lost a piece of your individuality. And then
Mm,
step two is scary because you're like, well, now what? Okay, now I'm aware of this, but like, what do I do? So
yeah.
my strategy was, and because I really didn't know the answer, like back then, now
Yeah.
I talk about it like it's easy, but it wasn't. Like, I really was like, well, what do I do now? Like, now I'm even more scared. So I just thought back before I was a mom and a spouse and a lawyer, like, what did I do? What did I enjoy? And the answer I had was volleyball. Like, I loved volleyball. I played varsity. I played all year round. I was really good at it. And I played even for fun through college, and I gave it up for law school and marriage and
Mm,
kids. And so I just joined this rec team on the beach where I knew nobody. And I just started playing volleyball. And the thing is, it's like muscle memory. Like my
Uh-huh.
body went back into that like head space of being
Yeah.
free and being young and having no responsibility. And like I started slowly to feel like that person come back. Like, oh, I remember Jessica. She was fun and she was good at sports
That's
and
awesome.
she loves to be part of a team. And like that for me started getting me in a place where I could figure out me again and start to prioritize some of the stuff that I enjoy. And the great thing about that was something I didn't anticipate. That joy started to seep in to my
Mm.
business, to the way that I lead
Oh,
my staff, to the way that I led my family, because I was showing up happier and I was showing up with more enthusiasm because I was like getting my groove back.
yeah.
And so when people think of like selfish and they feel like horrible putting themselves first, I would say, doesn't your family deserve that a little bit though? Like if you're
Hmm.
happy because you're
Hmm.
doing things that make you happy, like they get that better version of
Yeah.
you. Your staff
Yeah.
gets a better version of you. You get your creative juices flowing for the way that you can grow your companies if you're in a business that's not yours, how you can shine more. I mean, it's a pretty amazing phenomenon that happens when you're
Yeah.
happy.
It certainly is. So that's a great segue into your book, Selfish is a Superpower. When you wrote this book, you obviously were looking at all the different things you learned. What's different between the person that I'm talking with today versus the person from before? What's different and what's the same?
That person wasn't happy, and I don't think I
Mm,
realized that in the moment. I felt,
yeah.
and I think a lot of people think this, like this is how life is. You have kids and like that's just how it is, and like it's not about you anymore, and that's okay. And like,
Hmm.
we just kind of go like on this blah spectrum.
Yeah.
And the reason I wrote the book is because playing Monday morning quarterback, looking back at those years, I realized that my mouth was telling my kids, make sure you live a happy life, make sure you do what makes you happy, follow your dreams. But my body wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't taking
Mm,
action that aligned with my
yeah.
words. And so my kids were getting this blah mommy, and they were just going to mimic that because kids, they don't listen to us, they
Yeah.
watch what we do.
Exactly.
That's why sometimes as a parent you'll hear or see your kid do something and you'll be like, oh damn, they got that from me. Like, do you want to teach your kids that your happiness can stay on the back burner? It's okay, just live a mediocre life, don't worry, put everybody else first. Or do you want to teach them to go out and get what they want and be happy? And so I realize now that as I became happier, my kids started taking more chances in their little lives, in their little universe,
Mm,
and they started getting happier too. And so I thought people need to hear this because back then I would
yeah.
have never believed you. I would have never believed that this would somehow lead to my family's elevation. I would have
Mm,
felt selfish in a negative way. I would have felt
sure.
like it was all about me. And so I thought, let me just redefine this word for
Yeah.
people. And I think it's something a lot of people can relate to. And I have
Certainly.
this friend who's a rabbi, and she said in the Jewish faith, there's some kind of tenet. I don't know the technicalities of it, but the general gist is this: you could take a match and strike a match, and you could light your whole house on fire. That's like the extreme, right? Or that same little fire can go in the fireplace, start a little fire,
Mm,
warm your
hmm.
family, warm your
Yeah.
house, warm your meals, give you sustenance, give you happiness and, safety. Or you could take the match and set the world on fire, right? That's the same thing with selfishness. Like you
I
can
like that.
use
Yeah.
selfishness as a tool, as a superpower to
Hmm.
elevate and keep you happy and keep your family dynamic great. Or you can go, the complete
Yeah.
opposite direction and be complete jerk, right? Like it's a tool. It's a tool in
Yes.
the toolbox. So let's redefine it as that and use it
Yeah.
as a positive thing.
How did you learn to set boundaries with people? Because obviously, to be selfish, you have to set boundaries. How did you learn that to be efficient with it?
I learned it because I had to, and I'm hoping that I
Mm,
can save people a lot of time and not waiting till it's too late. But
yeah.
the real I started doing it little by little throughout my divorce because I really had no bandwidth for nonsense. Like I really
Hmm.
had to just go down to the bare bones survival tactics of like, who do I absolutely need to speak to? Who will help me feel happier and who will make me feel worse? Who's going to
Yeah.
judge me and who's going to lift me up, right? And so my circle shrunk real fast because I had to, because I didn't have the bandwidth to do the things I used to do and talk to all the people and help people because I was barely helping myself. And so that helped me start to form better boundaries and realize was going to be there to lift me up and who was actually feeding those negative thought flows in my head. And then it happened again because you can't just have one paring down isn't enough. During COVID, it happened again, because my businesses were shut down and I was fighting for my life and for my livelihood. And so again, I went even further and made my circle even smaller. Like if you're watching the news and panicking all the time, like I can't be around you because I
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
be in
yeah.
survival mode, taking care of my family, figuring out how to elevate, how to keep my businesses afloat. So I had to I think sometimes we wait until it's too late and our back's up
Hmm.
against the wall. I don't want you to wait till then. So I would say look around you. You're going to start to become the 5 people you hang out with the most. So
Hmm.
whoever you talk to the most, you're going to start mimicking them and thinking like them, and it becomes like a little bit of a group mentality. So you want to make sure that group is high level. People who
Yes.
understand you, who want you to win, who are rooting for you, and who don't drag you down with drama and nonsense. And so start to just take a look at who's around you and see and be honest about which people are bringing you down. And sometimes those answers are difficult to swallow. But
Yeah,
making small tweaks in your
I'm sure.
circle goes a long way.
And I don't know anything about your family, of course, but if hypothetically, if some of your family members were some of those people who were kind of bringing you down, and once again, amazing people, but if that was the case, how did you live with them, or how did you interact with them, but also keep those boundaries?
Those are the hardest things to accomplish, honestly. And my
Hmm.
mom and I, we kind of went through this period as many mother-daughter uh, couples do, right? Where it wasn't that she was bringing me down or I was bringing her down. It was just like we couldn't interact. Like we didn't know what the other
Yeah,
person needed. And so I think some of the boundary setting is setting boundaries on yourself too, and like checking yourself, like what
fair.
behaviors are you bringing to the table that are contributing to this. And so in my relationship with my mom, which was the hardest boundary to set, I had to really look at myself and be like, stop expecting her to change. Like
Mm.
that's who she is. Like some of the things maybe you don't like, she doesn't like things about you too. Like if you
It's
want to
fair.
move forward, you just got to accept that and stop fighting over it.
Yeah,
Like some of the push and pull is like trying to get people to think like you and feel like you. How about accepting that like they can be different than
yeah.
you and you can still love on each other? That's a flex.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think that's really good insight because I think we often do forget about that. The expectation that we're going through this whole personal change, we're doing so well, and so want people to accept us like that. As you said, I mean, it's they have their right to do and think however they want to as well. The one other thing though I was thinking is often when we are around our family system. So if I go back to family reunion, I then become Jimmy. Don't ever call me that, but I was Jimmy as a little kid. But when I go back, my mentality goes back to a little boy, a little chubby boy. And so I find myself being mindful of that. Like, wow, James, you are a 47-year-old man. You're not the same kid you were when you're younger. So, but I think it's one thing we often forget is when we return back to our family system, our family of origin, we often revert back to that younger self. And so all the growth that we've learned, sometimes we forget about it because we automatically, as I said, go back into that mentality. So I don't know if that was your case, but many times that will happen. So any of my viewers and listeners, be mindful of that when you hang out with your family. If you start to revert back to the old version of you, just be aware of that.
That's great advice.
I wanted to transition into your book again. So is this more of a memoir? Is this a self-help book? What kind of book is it?
It's like a little bit of everything because I
Yeah.
I wanted to tell my story because I think I learn a lot through example, and I think it's important for
Hmm.
people to see an example of
Yeah.
how this can go down, right? Now, but I like to give people tools to work with. So while along the way, while I'm telling you my story, I give you the specific strategies that I use to get myself out of every
Good.
situation that I talk about. And I want people, though, to use it as a possibility. Like, this is not the only way to bring yourself out
Yeah.
of the muck. It's not the only way to change the way you think or to start getting selfish. But I'm hoping that through example, you can see yourself a little bit and start to make a little bit of tweaks and give you some ideas on how to kickstart that. Cause I think that's the hardest part, is that initial like kickstart. Like, what do I
Hmm.
do now? So here's a couple of
Yeah.
examples. Maybe they'll work for you, but at least you can see it through my eyes and how it worked for me, and kind of pick and choose what you think is resonating.
Yeah. Now, what type of people would this book be good for? Or what's the
I
ideal
definitely,
reader?
to me, I don't want to exclude men, but I'm a woman.
Right.
So I wrote it from a mom's perspective. I think a
Hmm.
lot of women can really relate to what I'm saying and will be able to pick up this book and read it and start making immediate changes to their lives that can help.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I think it plays in for men is like, you may read this and I might be your wife. Like, I might may remind you so
Sure. Yeah,
much
that's
of
fair.
something you said or did, or some kind of like journey you had with your spouse, that might allow you to understand her a little bit more and be a little more patient as
Mm-hmm.
she works through these. Because I think the first 5 years of a kid's life are probably the toughest to get through as a couple, because they're so intense. And so I'm just hoping that like anyone can read this and realize like, this is a part of your journey. At some point you needed
Yeah.
this, or you have gone through something similar, and so now you know how to pick it up and pick up the pieces and start making strides towards the happy ending that you're all searching for.
Yeah, when we first started this, we talked about just the open and closed doors. The whole aspect of this, though. So you are, let's say, there's 100%. So you started your journey. Let's say you're at 50% now. Where do you foresee this selfish concept? Where do you see yourself evolving to? Not what you'll be doing, but you as a person.
Where am I
What does that look
evolving
like?
to? I mean, I've got big
Yeah,
aspirations. I think the more
yeah.
selfish I've become and the more I put myself first, the more I realize how much I'm capable of. And
Wow.
I'm very aware. So I'm like, my kids, I love them so much and we're so super close. But when they were my everything, my life fell apart. And the truth is,
Hmm.
maybe 10 years from now, like they're moving on. So I have to
Yeah,
set myself up for where my identity, my self-worth, and my happiness is derived from things other than them. Like they're part of the pie. But as the
yeah.
years go on, they have to kind of be less and less, because I'll be less and less a part of them. Right. So I have big aspirations. Like I want my book to get on television. I want to possibly host a TV show. I mean, I want to take
Awesome.
this book on tour. I want to be at the Super Bowl next year because I love football and I
Nice.
have like aspirations to meet certain people in that industry. So I don't even, I couldn't tell you where I'll be in 10 years, but I know
Yeah.
this time next year I'll be light years ahead of where I am right this moment.
That's so exciting. I'm super excited for you. That's wonderful. And I find it interesting though, but I'm sure obviously when you're going through everything before, you couldn't see that far ahead. So 5 minutes ahead can be overwhelming. But now, a year out, but how the aspirations you have are astronomical, and it's exciting to see. And we're getting caught up in the synergy of your hopes and dreams, and I'm very confident you'll be able to be successful with that as well.
Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, our time is up. We could talk a lot more than this. If my viewers and listeners want to find out more information about you, to purchase your book, Selfish is a Superpower, where will they find this information online?
They can go to my website, jessicadennehey.com, or barnesandnoble.com. It's on there. You can follow me on Instagram at the Jessica Dennehy, and I talk about it all the time, always posting the link. And I want this book to be on the New York Times bestseller list. So if you enjoyed this and you can purchase a copy, I would really appreciate it.
That's awesome. My viewers and listeners also know that if they can't find this information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com, and I'll link you with Jessica Dennehy and Selfish is a Superpower. Thank you once again for being a wonderful guest today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.